Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Village Council meeting for Monday, September 13th, 2021. I'll call the meeting to order. And we will invite anyone to announce any conflict of interest of which they might be aware. And if there's nothing at this point, I'll remind you, you can mention it at any time in the meeting. We will go on then to number 4 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from our August 9th meeting. So councilors say goodbye to only one meeting a month. Now we're getting into the heavy duty stuff. Our last meeting was a month ago in the summer, in the hot days of summer. I presume everyone's had a chance to look at the minutes from that meeting. And would there be somebody make a motion to approve those minutes from August 9th? Jason, I see Jason, thank you. And a seconder?
Second it.
I think I heard Sheila. Any discussion? All right, then, if we're ready for the motion, all in favor of approving the minutes from August 9th, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carry, thank you. All right, so now we're on to item 5, delegations, and we have our financial review. So Dan, I'll invite you to introduce this section of the meeting.
Yes, we're very fortunate tonight to have Andy Lenehan join us. Their firm is, I guess, second year they've done the audit for the municipality, and we've got, I guess, a few slides from the audit. As council knows, it was circulated in detail last month, and Andy's here tonight to give council just a recap and overview of the audit. So Andy, if you want to go ahead, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll just do a quick sound check. So is the kind of volume okay?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Dan made me promise to keep this under 2 hours. Actually, I think he said anything over 5 minutes, I'd be in big trouble, so I'll talk quite fast. So there are a couple handouts, and as he says, this will just be an overview of the highlights. We've been through it in great detail with he and Jamie, so we'll stick to highlights for sure and try and zip through this fairly quickly. The first thing that you'll see on the screen is the auditor's report, and I won't read through the whole thing. I just thought it might be worthwhile to highlight for you the first couple paragraphs, because that's kind of our role. So addressed to her worship and the mayor, members of council. So the first couple paragraphs just read, oh, I've got it. We have audited the consolidated or altogether financial statements of the Village of Perth Andover, which comprises the consolidated statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2020, and the consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus, change in net financial assets and cash flows for that year, and notes to those consolidated financial statements. And then the second paragraph, which the province will kind of focus on, in our opinion, as the external auditor, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material or significant respects the consolidated financial position of the municipality as at December 31st, 2020, and the results of the operations, the changes in net financial assets, which we'll go into in a minute, and the cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with what municipalities follow, which is Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's just a quick, what kind of our role is to give an opinion on the statement. So we call that the clean or unqualified opinion, meaning basically in layman's terms, everything's good. So I started right into that. I meant to say that my objective is to describe the highlights of the financial audit completed for the period ended December 31st, 2020, and then answer any questions that that you may have. So that's my goal. This represents our second year serving as the community's auditors, so we're pleased to be doing so. And as I say, the audit opinion is the desired audit opinion. There's no issues identified because we didn't identify any. So moving on from that screen or that page to what we refer to as the consolidated financial results, which you can now see for the most part on the screen. So it's page 3 in the lower left-hand corner, but that's perfect. What's on the screen now. So following the required PSAB, we call it Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards, the village achieved a surplus of 652,410. So near the bottom middle column, third last number, 652 was the surplus. I'll use round numbers. And you can see the year before it was 594,000. So 2 consecutive years of very strong results or very strong surplus. The surplus is determined by subtracting the expenditures total from the revenue total. So I'll draw your attention to the middle column, which says actual 2020 at the top. The budget is on the first column. The actual for the year before is on the far right column. The middle column are the actual results for this past year. So you'll see that the total revenues about halfway down the page were 7,274,000. The total expenditures were 6,622,000. The net of those two would be that surplus of 652,000. The decrease in revenues from the year before was attributable mainly to lower rec services, lower conditional grants, and lower fire lottery revenues. But those decreases were partially offset by increases in some other lines, and especially the investment income, which was very good in 2020 because the market performance was very good in 2020. On the expenditure side, the lower half of the page, each of the Light Commission, Protective Services, and Environmental Health were modestly higher expenditure totals than the year before, while all the other departments experienced lower expenditure totals. As we all know, the 2020 year was anything but normal. Therefore, the lower revenue streams and the lower expenditure were to be expected. The key takeaway would be that the surplus amount continues to be very strong, very favorable at 652,000. You don't have them, but pages 18 to 21 in the financial statements provide a greater level of detail as to the composition of those revenue and expenditure lines if you're really interested in drilling down into nitty gritty. But we just thought for tonight we'd hit the summary page rather than all that detail. So overall, a strong financial result, again, achieved by the village during 2020, just like it was in 2019. We'll move on from that page to, given those results, where did the financial position stand for the village at the end of December of 2020? You'll see it was very, very good. At December 31st, 2020, the village had total, what we call financial assets, the top kind of quarter of the page, 8,443,000 as compared to 7,576,000, I'm sorry, for the year before. So positive progress. Not surprisingly, the higher that financial assets total, the better. At December 31st, 2020, the village had a very manageable $897,000 in total liabilities, which was approximately 105,000 lower than the year before. So that large spread between total financial assets and total liabilities is referred to as the net financial assets. So you can see up to 7,546,000. Not surprisingly, the higher that number, the better. The spread between the asset total and liability total is a very healthy $7.5 million at the end of December of 2020, up from about $6.6 million round numbers the year before. So overall, the village continues to be in solid consolidated financial position. The next page we'll just cover very quickly is called the reconciliation of annual surplus. Page 16, Dan and I thought it was worth sharing this because it's intended to reconcile the surplus realized under PSAB, like the newer accounting standards that have applied for the last 8 or 10 years for municipalities, to the surplus that would have applied under the previous accounting standards. And the reason it would seem confusing to show the current presentation and what it looked like before, but the adjusted total on the bottom, which says 2020 annual fund surplus, especially the general operating fund of 59,969, the water and sewer operating fund, and then the Light Commission operating fund. Those first two for general operating and water sewer at the very bottom of that schedule are what are used for rate setting purposes. So the province want all the municipalities to report under PSAB, which is the top line on that schedule. So they want that information, but they also want what would it look like under the old standards, because they're still using those for setting of tax rates. So that's kind of why we thought we'd just quickly show you that page, because the surpluses of 502 and 209 at the top left-hand corner aren't relevant when it comes to rate setting. The 59 and the 89 are, and that's where transfers from the operating fund to reserve funds for future use come into play. So there's planning done each year to identify if there's surpluses that can be kind of set aside for the future. So you can see transfer from operating fund to general operating reserve fund. About halfway down that page, there's a 487 that was transferred out of the operating fund, 226 transferred out of the water and sewer. So we're kind of just saying we're going to park those surpluses over in the operating reserve funds for a year in the future. And again, so by doing that, that draws the surpluses down so that there's not so much, there wouldn't be fluctuation on when it comes to the rate setting. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I know I'm going quite fast, but I think my 5 minutes is quickly evaporating here. My other comment section, cash flow continues to be very well managed in our opinion. The village was able to invest over 767,000 in new tangible capital assets. Of course, important to be reinvesting in the community. So 767 of new, approximately 490,000. That was what we refer to as infrastructure type new assets. And that follows the 2019 year when there was about $884,000 invested in new capital assets. So I think that's important because that's kind of where some of the surplus, where some of the money is going, is continuing to invest so that things are in good shape, going into the future. So therefore, over the last 2 years, slightly more than $1,650,000 has been invested without borrowing any new money. I would add, not always the case where new assets aren't offset by new loans that require payment. So the fact that you guys are able to invest in the community without taking on new debt is a kind of a testament to the financial results and the financial history that is very, very good. As far as closing remarks, we discovered no significant issues or problems during the course of our audit procedures. Nothing to share with Mayor and Council tonight on that topic. All good. And we congratulate Mayor, Council, and senior management, including Dan and Jamie and the rest of staff, for a very successful financial year. And before questions, I do want, on behalf of our firm, thank you for the opportunity to provide audit and financial advisory services to the village, and encourage you to contact us with any questions, comments, or concerns. So that's the quick overview. I do understand that's a lot of information and a lot of numbers to throw at you. People like Dan and Jamie and I really like talking about this stuff and the numbers, but hopefully that provides a bit of a flavor for both the results last year and the financial position, which again, both favorable, both strong. Nothing of concern or anything of that nature to bring to your attention tonight. So I'll slow her down and just maybe see if there's any questions related to either that or maybe something I didn't describe that you were hoping to hear something about.
Thank you very much, Andy. I'll invite councillors to ask questions or make remarks at this time. I'm going to jump in with a question and I'll just give the councillors another opportunity. 2020 would have been a very difficult year to figure out. It seems remarkable. I guess what I'm wondering is, when you look at projections, how did we manage to do so well, would you say, in simple terms, considering that the year took a nosedive 3 months in? Can you just explain that simply?
Yeah, I think Dan could certainly speak more definitively than me, but from our point of view as the auditors, I would say it was recognized back probably in the spring of 2020 that there was a lot of uncertainty. And I would say that there was probably caution exercised when it came to the expenditure side. So as I say, often in a municipality or a business, if revenue is going to decrease, in your case, almost $400,000, if expenses or costs stay the same, you're obviously going $400,000 behind because the revenue total is down. In fact, you guys were able to trim your expenses by a little bit more than the revenue decrease. So I would say good management, honestly, recognizing that 2020 had a lot of uncertainty from spring onward, and kind of following the budget by and large, and not having any, probably some of it any year, not having any bad luck when it comes to repairs or things that pop up that just weren't expected. I'd say a combination of good planning, good management, and I guess always when there's good financial results, that it's part of it is things just went as they were, as they needed to. And again, Dan could probably speak a little more to what the kind of conversations were at the office on what to do, but that would be my sense as to what happened.
What you're also saying is that our staff were able to respond appropriately when the curves came in last year. Jason, I see your hand there, and I'll get to you in a moment. Dan, do you want to add any comment to what Andy just said?
No, Andy is correct. I guess early on when it came to decisions on after COVID hit, we did take significant cost reductions with staffing and things. It certainly paid a financial dividend to the community. We had some savings there, and of course all the program savings and all that. So it's certainly, we try to be proactive managing it early on. So we're just very, very lucky.
I would add the investment portfolio cooperated too. It was a good year. It was a good year for that to be probably better than average, which always helps. I mean, that's a bit of an unpredictable. You're invested in good investments and that kind of thing, but the market was good in 2020, so it was that helps also.
Yeah, it's always
the
easier
fact
to
you've
be
had money set
luckier.
aside allows you to make investment income, right? If you don't have any savings, the fact the market was good, there would be some municipalities and businesses that wouldn't benefit from the markets being strong because they wouldn't have had money from prior years, good management to invest. So this is where it pays off.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Councillor Jason Green.
Thank you. Andy, I question first, I guess, when you mentioned about other communities, would your firm also like audit other communities of similar size to ours?
Yeah, great question. We have about 7 or 8, I think it's 8 maybe in total municipalities around the province that we do the audit for. None that are, I would say, directly comparable to you guys in that the Light Commission sorted is a variable that you have that none of the other ones that we're involved with would have, and probably, I'm not sure anybody, maybe Edmonton, there wouldn't be more than 1 or 2 probably in the province. But, so not comparable from that point of view. I guess I would just say that normally when we see new tangible capital asset investment like $700,000, $800,000 a year, we often see new borrowings from the municipal, from the board to finance those investments. So the fact that between ongoing surpluses and previous surpluses, that you guys are in such a good financial position to make those investments, that's a bit unique as far as the files that I'm familiar with. So that's certainly a plus. I'm trying to think again from a size comparability point of view. Yeah, I would say you guys rate very well as far as results and as far as how strong your balance sheet is.
I guess you kind of touched on.
Position, sorry.
Okay, good. Yeah, I guess you kind of touched on where I was going next, because you mentioned, the investments that we had done and the savings that we had, and I guess I was kind of wondering, would we be? Sometimes you think you're doing stuff, and we are doing lots of projects, but you wonder, should we be doing more? Could we be doing more? And I guess you kind of touched on that a little bit in that answer, that we're able to do what we're doing with the savings that we have rather than the borrowing. But you always just wonder whether or not we could or should be doing more, or potentially less, I guess. So that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's a valid question, a valid point. And that's, I guess there's always kind of a happy medium there between having money, being in good financial shape and taking advantage of good markets with investment income and that kind of thing, and when and how much to invest in the community. And I guess that's where your 5 and 10 year kind of capital plans come into play as to what level of investment makes sense while still preserving that solid financial position that you've accumulated over the years. But yeah, good question. Probably no right or wrong answer necessarily. I would say that the decisions of the past have certainly led to a very strong financial position. I don't know if that doesn't maybe directly answer, but it's a I guess an ongoing fair question.
Thank you for that question and the answer. Other questions or comments from councillors? Okay, if we don't have any other comments or questions, well, thank you very much for your presentation, Andy. Now, Dan, do we need a motion or we did a motion at the last meeting, I believe, to approve the preliminary. So we can just thank Andy and release him. Is that our next step?
Okay,
Thank you
I'll sign off. Thanks very much for having me, and hopefully we have a chance to look after the audit for you next year, and we could have this meeting in person.
We'll see. Thank you very much for
that's
your
right.
work. And
Yeah,
you're
today's news wasn't so great, was it? Okay,
I
thanks,
don't know.
everybody.
In person doesn't seem as attractive today. Thank you very much, Andy. We'll talk to you
Okay,
again next year.
take care. See ya.
Okay, so now we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda, unfinished business, the Smart Energy Communities Benchmark Report. So a few of us were able to participate in this presentation on August 18th with Eddie Oldfield, and I believe the whole report was in our package. So Dan, I'll get you to tell us some of the highlights from this session that we participated in.
Okay, great. And the internet at the office is jamming up every now and then. So if I freeze up, I haven't gone to sleep or anything. This presentation done by Eddie, and they're based by Eddie, as Mayor Bell mentioned. They sort of look at the strength and weaknesses of our plan compared to some other communities, how they're doing. And this is sort of the different areas that they see strength and weaknesses in. So they basically, in that detailed report, this is just one of the summary page where they sort of look at how they scored us in different areas. For example, governance and policy, the way we're set up, and our strategy, the financials, the staff. The reason the staff scored so low is because of our lack of full-time staff committed to this process. We're just a small municipality. We're not like an urban center that has multiple employees to put on this file. So that's one of the reasons why the staffing capacity scored lower than some of the other areas. And then community energy system progressing. So we've done very well. Is later on in that report, they talk about areas to improve so we can up these scores. So the goal of the program is that by the end of the year, when we get through this process, that we can hopefully get those scores up higher in each of the categories. So that's a sort of Cole's Note summary of it.
Jason, you were at that session too, I believe. I wonder if you want to add any comments or context for the rest of the council.
Yeah, I would. Just one of the things I would mention, and Dan kind of hit on it about when they kind of gave us our strengths and weaknesses, especially towards the end. And when I was looking through the report too, some of the areas for improvement that they note, they're very lofty goals, and sometimes I think they're very green goals, and they're very desirable, but they're also maybe not quite necessarily realistic for our community. And that was some of the questions I had. The other thing I found in reading the report, sometimes too, some of the suggestions, like in the waste and water where we look so low, we know that our waste management, a lot of it is out of our hands when it comes to RSC involvement or our recycling and whatnot. And so sometimes some of the things aren't necessarily directly in our control. So it'd be nice to be able to see that reflected in a little bit. But I also think when we were some of those numbers may look very low, but when we were being compared to some other communities, we were actually very strong overall. So that was my takeaway, I guess.
Thank you for that. I participated in the session too, and I found that there was a strong emphasis on improving our education. We were supposed to be educating our population more, and we had a bit of a discussion about who is receptive to the education and what key points and so on. So education is often one of the goals in response to any kind of an issue. So anyways, we will be considering that. And one of the reasons why we rate usually quite favorably compared to other communities is we have been in this endeavor. We've been working on being a greener community for a number of years. We were an early adopter of the opportunity to get some help making a plan and so on. And so we've been committed to this as a council and so on for quite a long time. Dan, I'll just invite you to say anything else you'd like to say.
No, that's great. Just look forward to working, I guess, further on that file with council and the community.
Okay, anything else from councillors? Any questions or comments? Okay, we'll move along on to the next item. Under 7, correspondence. So this is a letter that came to my email, and we will be talking about this in more detail at item 10, motions and notices of motions. And I apologize, I thought I had sent this to Dan to be included, and I ran into it at about 6 o'clock tonight and remember that I hadn't sent it on to him. So I'm just going to give all the counselors a moment to read this, and then we'll just move along and discuss it further later in the agenda. Okay, I think maybe people have had a chance to read that, and so we'll discuss that further in a few moments. Was there anything else under correspondence, Dan?
No.
All right, so we're on to reports. Go ahead and tell us highlights here, Dan.
Okay, just the monthly stats. As you can see, some things are up a little bit, some fluctuation one way or the other. The large bin pickup is up, although we sort of mentioned at the last meeting, I don't think it's actually up that much. I think we have a misreported number from the RSC in that number. So it's we're up, but it's not that good. Total recycling, the solid waste, as you can see, the year to date, as we're finding our tonnage is up. Recycling, it sort of appears in our case anyways, I'm not sure about the other communities downriver or in Plaster Rock, the curbside recycling has not, I guess we haven't seen our solid waste tonnage has not gone down with the implementation of the curbside recycling. And the total recycling number has gone up over last year, but still we're not getting the gains from the program that we hoped, and we certainly are doing more marketing around getting people to recycle and reduce waste, but we certainly we're still not going the other way on that as far as collection goes. So other than that, the energy consumption is, or Andy mentioned earlier, the Civic Center consumption is way down, of course, for closing early and the lower usage last year. The fitness memberships, of course, are blossoming with the thing compared to being closed last year. So you can sort of see the overall power consumption for the electric utility. Our customers have purchased basically 3%. We've consumed about 3% less energy this year over last year. So of course that impacts the Light Commission revenue. The power outages have been good. We had our leak report done again. We hired a gentleman from Halifax to come up and do a leak detection on our water system. I haven't had the chance to review the report in detail yet, but my understanding is it was very positive and just found some minor issues on our system. And of course, some of the other things are up compared to last year. Of course, some of the other stats from the so.
I'll just pause you there, and I've got a question about web service registrations. The top third. What's
and the reason
there?
that's up is because people go online to register for our recreation programs.
I thought, yeah, that's not the paperless billing, right? Okay. Any other questions before we move on from counselors? Questions or comments from counselors about what we see on this page?
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, Mary. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, do you want me to start the fire one now? Yeah, the fire report there, as you can see, comparing year over year, the number of calls last year to date was 91, 88 this year. So everything seems to be status quo on the fire side.
Questions or comments for counselors about the fire department report? Okay, continuing on. I guess it would be the mayor and council reports, 8C. So I'll begin, let me see. Yes, I'll just tell you about a few things that I was able to do on behalf of the council and the village in the last month, and then we'll just ask if there's any reports from anybody around the table. There was a New Brunswick Day celebration that was very, very well handled by our staff, and I was able to bring greetings from the council on that day. And then, as we've already discussed, the report with Eddie Oldfield about our smart energy benchmarks. I've participated in that. There were 2 women who came from Moncton who are doing a trip all around the province to promote understanding of mental health. And they spent about 6 hours in this village going in and out of most of the businesses and doing a plug, mostly in French, but a little bit in English too. They were called Les Trotteuses, and they were extremely enthusiastic and positive. Did a really great little report on our village, but they're only posting them every couple weeks. And so somewhere around October, I believe, there will be a blurb on their YouTube channel and about our village. It will be maybe something like 20 minutes long, largely in French, and it will have they went in and out of many of the businesses in town, talked to different storekeepers and so on. So that was a great little promotional thing for our village with these 2 enthusiastic people. The Western Valley Regional Games had good support from our community. There were a good number of kids who went down and participated in that on August 19th, and I was able to go down there for the opening ceremonies. The Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick Board of Directors held a meeting in August, and I'll be talking about that. We've already talked about the meeting that Dan and I attended with the Minister of Environment and RDC, Gary Crossman, and then another meeting with Minister Alain and Minister Johnson. We had a report to read in our packages about body worn cameras with the RCMP, and I did go to a briefing on that. There was a Regional Service Commission meeting where the new executive and committees were set up, and it looks like we might have some interesting discussions at the RSC in the months ahead, because there are some brand new people with an active voice on the RSC. And then this past Thursday, UMNB is doing some sessions, some workshops that they would normally do at a big conference that they do, the AGM, in October. And this past Thursday, there was a session on social media. You were all invited to that session. It was very interesting. There were some neat ideas and issues dealt with, including how to deal with nasty social media posts. And that was great. And I will mention a little bit later on that I encourage counselors to attend those sessions if you can. I've had a few conversations with Plaster Rock and Aroostook leadership about municipal reform, just trying to get them up to speed a little bit on what we're thinking about, and that's sort of an ongoing matter. I guess that's all I'll say for now. There's a few things coming down the pipe, and you'll hear about them down the road. And I will just at this point ask if any of the other counselors have attended a significant meeting or an event on behalf of the village that you would like to report on.
They've already been mentioned really, but I'll just say that I did attend the energy report, and also Sheldon and I did manage to attend the New Brunswick Day celebrations, and both came out of it wet. And then also the local government meeting that we had as well.
Right. Yeah, great support from our counselors in the dunk tank there, that's for sure.
I attended the Canada Day or the New Brunswick Day celebration, and I received an invitation to the community roundtable in Heartland at 6 o'clock to Wednesday night. And that's because I'd attended several of the sessions that they had for the municipal reform. And so I thought it might be worthwhile attending that. So I'll go to that one on Wednesday night, this week and also go to the library board tomorrow.
Good, yeah, so in response to the what we have heard document that the Minister of Land has put out, they're having a very small number of live in-person roundtables around the province, and there's limited numbers and so on. And so that's great, Sheila, that you were able to sign up for that, and you're on the inside track on hearing what we might, listening for clues about what's going to happen and seeing what we might be able to still do to advocate for the most intelligent reforms possible. Anything else from anyone else?
I will just say that I attended the bass tournament, welcoming them to the municipality, and I didn't realize the fish in the river were that big. It was pretty amazing. I never wanted to swim there before, but I really don't now. But they were so happy to be here. They're very happy to come here every year, and it was really nice to meet the people involved, and so that was, and the New Brunswick Day was nice to see everybody out, all the kids, and the famous employee of the village was around serving hot dogs, and he was very, you know, it just made he was very big part of getting around and meeting people. So I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, I finally got to meet the fellow whose video has hit how many millions of views now. And I will just thank you, Tammy, for going to that fishing tournament. Fishing is a big deal in this town. And one of the things that hopefully will happen in the next few weeks is that Councillor Sheldon Shaw will do a filming for a TV program about fishing, backwater casting. So hopefully that that actually does come to pass, that the weather works out, and that you show all the great stuff about our town, Sheldon, that you can talk about.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's I'm looking forward to it. Seems like it's going to be quite fun.
Well, I went and bought my outdoor license and my fishing license. I didn't know what I was doing when I did it, but I went right in there and did it because I thought we were going to be doing it another time in September when I was available. So I can't really just hand you my license. You're on your own to get your own paperwork lined up for this event.
Yeah.
Maybe you
All
have
good.
it already.
Yeah, I think I bought it the first day.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then we'll move on then to 8D, local government reform. My goodness, we've talked a lot about this, and the conversation has not ended. So, Dan, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, it's circulated the document to council. The what we heard document has been released, and I read through it a couple of times. It's interesting, the little blocks of the what we heard segments in the structure of the report sometimes matches up with the text with it, and sometimes I found maybe it didn't. So it's interesting. They've released this document, as council's well aware. The province plans to move ahead with the white paper. They've announced these 8 sessions around the province, which I believe so far Sheila and I both registered for from the community. My understanding is the government's got a bit of slack on this about why only 8 and why are they in such rural areas. So my understanding is that the province is adding additional sessions for discussion to that document. But my understanding is that once again that they're moving ahead with this, and they're basically, as you can see from the last, in those 2 paragraphs that I put in there about they're going to have bold and progressive changes in Brunswick's landscape. So it sounds like the government still is moving in the direction of government reform by this fall, and for implementation, we were told by elections in 2023, or new elections.
So at a previous meeting, council, we had talked about perhaps having some conversations with the LSD leadership and the village of Aroostook. And so we're still trying to figure out who are the key people to talk to in the LSDs of Andover Parish and Perth Parish. And I have been emailing with the clerk of the village of Aroostook on behalf of their council. explaining some of the thoughts that we have from our municipality, and I'm going to be talking further with her later on this week. Whether we whether doing advanced work will change what ultimately happens, we don't really know, but we do have various resources we need to protect and look out for our residents here. Some of the issues that we might even be talking about, well, if not this meeting, another meeting, a lot of things will change if we end up being a very differently shaped municipality. Even in terms of what we might set for goals for the next 4 years would be different if we're going to be morphing into something different in a year and a half. Any comments or questions about the what we have heard document, or any new thoughts or questions about this municipal reform issue? Okay, now policing, lots of stuff about policing. So Dan, you can walk us through these different documents that we were able to look at.
Yeah, this is the first one's just the delivery model. All the communities are having policing issues around the province due to a whole bunch of reasons, of course. So this is sort of a process guide for review of policing services in community. And as everyone's been told, that the RCMP services I put in here could change, but it sounds like they will change in the near future of the service the RCMP offers to provinces and municipalities. The province, from what we're told, is considering several different models of policing. I guess I couldn't elaborate on them. I've been told of certain types, but they're looking at different models to replace the RCMP potentially, whether it be regional police forces or provincial police force or combination or something like that, or potentially, I'm assuming, continue something with the RCMP under different service contracts. So the issue is not just policing, it's also the justice system. From what a lot of communities are saying, that even if the police do a great job, what's actually happening with the people that are causing these crimes to occur and things? Are they back out the next day or and things like that? So there's certainly, it's not just a policing issue, but it also seems to be how people are or how processed through the system, so to speak. So that first document is just a sort of the review of that. I believe it's 21 pages or something there. People want to take a look at it, but that's I guess the process guide for areas that want to go through that process.
Yeah, I just want to add that when I looked at that, I felt like the title didn't really indicate. It's kind of about, if you're thinking about changing what you're doing for policing, this is what you have to do. You have to review what's doing, and then you have to kind of give notice that you might want to change. But what it's really about is, if you're not happy and you want to maybe look at making some major changes, this is what you have to do, right? It's not how it works in general. It's what you want to do to fix things. Would you say that's accurate, Dan?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So that was that document. Okay, and the next one was the body camera.
Yeah, these two slides just go over the program overview. It's part of a national strategy that the federal government announced that they would like to have between up to 75,000 cameras being worn. So there's this document sort of highlights the implementation plan, the objectives of the plan, and how the plan's rolling out. So these are just the two short documents. I think I included in the council documents in the version, but these were the easy ones for our PowerPoint to put in. So there's more details in the package.
And if we want to go more into depth, we could invite someone to come talk to us about this. Probably councillors are all aware that there's many sensitive issues about this, and in the session that I attended, there were questions about whether people know they're being filmed and what happens with the films and who gets access to the films and when they're destroyed and so on and so on. And so this, maybe some people will think it's about time and other people will see numerous concerns about this whole initiative, but it is being rolled out in a to a very large scale, like everywhere. There are going to be these body worn cameras. So especially if anybody contacts you in the community and wants to know a bit more about it, we do have some information and we have people we can point people to get more questions answered. Any questions or comments on that? Everybody's taking their video off. I guess they're saving bandwidth. All right, go ahead, Dan, continue on.
You're muted, Dan.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, some of the councilors talking about prior to the meeting started just briefly about the stats in this report and stats in the community. As you can see, the zone that the RCMP cover in our area, it's basically the same as a regional service commission. And the types of calls are in that report, and there's more detail to it. And it's obvious that, as I mentioned earlier, everywhere the stats are on the rise in different communities. So I'd certainly recommend that to interpret these stats, it would be great for council. I know we'll get to discussion later on the agenda, but it certainly would be good to get a meeting with the RCMP directly to go over these and the policing issues in the community, and maybe they could answer some more detailed questions of council's concerns.
Yes, go ahead, Jason.
And I know the last time we had them in, we talked and they presented the SCAN program to us. They also said that, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I guess that's more of a question than a statement. It's my understanding that communities could also use the SCAN program, not just citizens. Okay, do you know if we have or not as a community?
I don't think the municipality has. We promoted it in our newsletter.
Right, yeah.
But my understanding when they met with us before, that they only had 2 staff dedicated to that program. And from what I'm told now, and I'd like to get it confirmed, but I'm told that number is up to 8 members now. So
I'm sure that you guys are probably well more aware of where the hotspots are in town. And maybe that's something we need to initiate as a village to report some of those hotspots to that program, perhaps.
I'll just remind everyone that SCAN, I believe, stands for Safe Communities and Neighborhoods. And the simple version of that is that people can report locations that seem to have dangerous or criminal activity going on. I guess that's my little bite-sized summary of that program.
Yeah, and if council wanted to also, we could do if council feels it's an important enough issue, we could certainly do a mail out to all the residents in the community within the municipality about that program and the number to call. We could certainly make that happen.
That might be something to consider, especially when we get down to 11B, when we talk about this a little bit more about a few different things we might want to do to take action. That's something we can jot down to add on to our discussion on 11B.
Okay.
Anything else anybody wants to say about that report? So this is the report section. Okay, so I think we there's a lot of numbers. It's not always all that user friendly, but we'll come back to public security and policing issues a little bit later when we look at some different things. And so now number 9 is bylaws, and I guess there's nothing about bylaws, so we're on to number 10, motions and notices of motion. And we've looked at the code of conduct, and we just need to formally adopt it now. We discussed it again at the last meeting and talked about the enforcement part. Dan, would you like to just say anything else about that?
No, from the last meeting, I made the changes on the enforcement part and clarified some of the wording and have a separate appendix page for the council members to sign it.
So I think I would like to have a motion, and then we'll move in second, and then we can have further discussion. Would there be somebody make the motion to adopt this code of conduct?
I would move.
Thank you, Sheila. And a seconder?
I'll second it.
I think that was Tammy.
Yep.
Any discussion? I presume everyone's had the chance to read the document again and look at the changes, particularly in the last little bit of the document. So what we had said about enforcement was that things would go to a committee, including a counselor, a staff, and a community member. And we'll hope we don't have to use this, but if we do, we'll work it out at that time. All right, is there any other comment or question before we have the vote? All right, we have a motion to approve the code of conduct for elected local government officials. All in favor of this motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Well, that's good. We tried to do this, I think, 3 years ago, and now we finally have formally adopted it. That's good. All right, so now we're on to number B, 10B. And I'll do a little talking on this. I've been contacted by a few people, and I imagine many people on the council are aware of this issue, that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2015 included many calls to action. And on Canada Day, I was encouraging the community to take a look at those recommendations. And so there's a few whereases here. This is a motion that was adopted from an Ontario municipal organization. But the final paragraph is the key point there. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Village of Perth Andover commit to recognizing September 30th, 2021 as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation by instituting a statutory holiday for municipal employees and staff outside of essential services. Like, I don't know if there's something that has to, be done with water, power, and urging education and reflection on the history and stories of residential school survivors, their families, and communities. Now, I will just make the comment that when I was thinking about this earlier this month, I was more in favor of a dedicated portion of the day for our staff to do education, to watch a film or participate in an activity or to listen to a speaker or to do an online course. And I felt that having dedicated time in the workday could be more useful in terms of learning and growth personally for our staff. But as the month went on, I feel like there's a significant movement in many communities and in our own community to recognize residential schools, the trauma caused by them, by having a statutory day off. And so there's symbolic value, and we, as we say there, we urge education and reflection on this day. So I've kind of changed my own position to thinking that an education session would be the best way, to thinking that perhaps having a stat day for our municipal staff is the way to go. So there's my path, and now I will invite councillors to speak their opinions on this issue.
It's Sheldon. Completely support this. Would you also consider adding another portion on another day where there is some sort of education, where whichever you choose? But I think it's a good idea, but because you give structure, instead of just letting people go and decide how they want to do it, that's what this day will be for. But if we had another day that you set aside for a couple of hours, would you be open to that?
That seems like a good idea to me. It would be a matter of the management being instructed to designate a portion of a day for something like that. And I think that would be a way to make this day more impactful.
Yeah, I think it's important that we have the day, a statutory holiday, but we do have a designated education time, and we probably should set a time for that.
There are interesting I've been looking at what other places are doing, and I just forget now which municipality was showing a particular movie to their staff about a residential school story, and I thought that would be a good beginner way to acquaint people with the issue. I think what we could do is we could direct the staff as part of recognizing this day to implement some sort of an education component, you know, around the day, give or take, you know, a few days according to, you know, work schedules and the tasks of the week and so on. Dan, that wouldn't be impossible to arrange, do you think?
No, I think it's an excellent idea and be glad to set up.
Other comments from councillors?
And sorry, Sheldon, one more time, would it be okay if we participate as counselors as well in those sessions that are being set up?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great idea. Great idea. I'm just wanting to see if any other counselor wants to make a comment.
This is Cindy.
Yes.
I agree 100% with Sheldon. I think that we should be participating also.
Thank you. Okay, well, we have this motion that I adapted from this Ontario Municipal Association. I'm not dead set on this particular wording, but if somebody would like to make a motion, you could use the wording that's here, or you could change the wording. It's not an amendment to a motion yet because we haven't made the resolution. So would someone like to make a motion that's something like this or exactly like this?
Yep, that's fine. The wording there is fine. So moved.
Thank you, Jason.
I'll second it.
Thank you,
And-
Sheila.
And I'll add another paragraph onto that about the council and staff training.
Yes,
Yes,
Mhm.
thank you. Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so we have it moved by Jason and seconded by Sheila that we adopt this motion with another paragraph about staff training that counselors would also be invited to. If we're all ready for the question, all in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So I think we will want to make this motion particularly public because the public has been discussing it on social media and so on. It's been numerous news stories have reported on organizations or businesses who are or are not closing their doors. And I do know a few people were wondering what Perth Andover was going to do. And so now that we've had a council meeting and it's been voted on unanimously, it would be a good time to release this to the public. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on then to 10C, fencing tender results, but I'm guessing this isn't the recreational fencing.
No, this is fencing with barbed wire on the top of it, following our theme for tonight. We've expanded the compound. I guess this was something we talked about with last council, expand the compound and for sand and salt storage. But also we're getting complaints about the industrial park lots. We'd like to get those cleaned up, and we have some pole storage and some other storage over on industrial lots that we would like to sell. So when we did the work last year up in the industrial park, we expanded the compound area behind the Public Works building and cleared that all out and leveled it. Of course, we'd like to, as much as we would like to be able to do it without fencing, we certainly feel that we need to put fencing around the compound. So we're going to do that. We'd like to do that. The prices we get on that, we had I believe three companies gave us proposals. The cheapest was $42,109, but that also included us retrofitting our gate that goes in and out of the compound to an electric gate, which would automatically close when people leave. And if they're in the compound, if they drive up to it, it'll automatically open. We have some issues around if all the crew goes out during the day, quite often the gate gets left unlocked and all the buildings are accessible in the back. So we feel this would be a lot better security for our equipment and things, and a lot more user-friendly for the staff.
Where is Expert Fence Company Limited located?
I think they have offices all around or in a few spots in the province. I think the gentleman that bid this was from Bathurst.
Okay, so we're doing two separate motions here. And the first one we're talking about then is the fencing. Are there any other questions about that, that fencing motion then from councillors? Have we ever dealt with this company before?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll entertain a motion just on the first one, the fencing RFP to Expert Fence. Is that correct? Just one at a time?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, would someone like to make that motion?
I'll
I
move.
will. I wanted to give somebody else the opportunity, but I will.
Okay, I've got Jason down for mover and seconder then. Sheila, were you offering the second?
Yes, okay.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All right, then we'll go to the vote. All in favor of approving the fencing RFP to Expert Fence Company in this amount, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then the TARP building.
Yeah, this is last year council approved to purchase, I guess, 2 40-foot. And one of the reasons for the storage containers is storing our pipe that we keep in stock, our PVC pipe. It shouldn't be out in daylight, shouldn't be in the sun. So we're looking to take those storage containers, put our pipe in there for better storage. And we'll also have some other areas or other items to put into the containers. But the thought was to take our sand and salt storage and put a dome over those containers to do sand and salt storage. Especially now with our new truck that's coming, we might be able to take on a bit more, do more municipal streets potentially to save a few dollars, hopefully. So this TARP building would just cover the 2 storage containers. It's a 50 by 40 dome that would just basically attach to the top of the storage containers, and we'd use concrete blocks for the back wall, and we'd look at putting a potentially a door, overhead door in the front of it. So this was the lowest price. It's from Tarprite, who were located right here in Woodstock or Jacksonville, I think, or not quite sure. And they've this company built the last 2 TARP buildings that we have in the compound, and we've been happy with them. Due to building code, these ones are even heavier designed than the last ones we acquired. So,
Were there other companies that put in a proposal for this?
yeah, just one other, and they were like 20% above.
Any other questions? All right, would we have someone make the motion to approve the TARP building?
I will. Sheldon.
Oh, then, thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Cindy. Any further discussion on this motion? Seems like an expensive TARP building to me. But
Yeah, I talked to Brent about a lot on types of construction, but this year, of course, any type of construction is expensive. We looked at trying to build a piece on side the municipal building, the existing one, do an addition on that, but the costs come in significantly higher than the TARP building. And where we need the storage space for the pipe and some other things in the containers, this one seems to be economically the right choice to make.
well, it's reassuring that we've dealt with this company and we've been satisfied with the product. All right, we have the motion moved by Sheldon and seconded by Cindy. If we're ready for the vote, then all in favor of this motion to approve the TARP building, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Good. All right. And now we have the Planning and Advisory Committee members. And so we have some members of the community who have been on the Planning and Advisory Committee, and we've added 2 counselors. And I don't remember if I explained to the council previously that I often sit on this committee, but I'm going to not sit on this committee because my husband and I own a building that has some work being done on it and so on. And so where I could possibly be in a situation where any kind of a variance or something could theoretically ever be needed, I want to just move myself right out of the committee permanently. So it seems to me that it's ideal if people who are available during the day but don't own property that's going to need a variance would be on this committee. So this is the Planning and Advisory Committee as recommended, and I wonder if someone would like to make a motion that we approve this committee.
I
So
will.
move.
Okay, I heard Jason and Sheldon, and I'm going to put Jason first and Sheldon as a seconder. Would there be any discussion on this? This is the committee that really needs to be firmed up because it's got to do with legal, zoning, and so on. Some of the other committees are a bit more flexible. Okay, if we're ready for the motion, all in favor of approving this slate for the Planning and Advisory Committee, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carry. I don't know if I heard a vote from every counselor, and I will just remind counselors that everyone has to vote on every motion. And it's a little awkward maybe when counselors' names are on a motion, but anyways, I just will remind counselors that there's no option to, and maybe I just didn't hear, but for the record, we don't have the option ever to abstain from a vote. Anyways, that was all the votes were in favor and unopposed, so we're going to call that carried. All right, now 11, new business. So there have been some various concerns about bylaws and the enforcement of bylaws. So I asked Dan to explain to the council and to the public, because this is a recorded meeting, the process for infractions of our bylaws. And so we're not going to talk about any specific situations because sometimes there are legal entanglements with them, but Dan is going to talk in general about what happens with these kinds of things, and he may give some examples that would be helpful. So I will turn over to Dan to walk us through this.
Okay, great. The first one I'm just going to touch on is the dangerous and unsightly premise. And basically how that's initiated is based on a complaint for a resident or a property owner about a particular property, or by an inspection of a municipal employee. We send out a friendly notice to comply letter first, a sort of a polite letter where sort of help us take pride in our community. If you could clean up this area, this debris, things like that. And to be honest, 90% of the time, residents will do something and clean up their property. However, that if it proceeds further and we issue a notice to comply, outlining the issues, a remedy, and a deadline date. So basically, we say to John Doe, look, you need to have this debris moved off your property by a certain date. You have to do it. And then we also, with that notice to comply, issue an appeal form that if they would like to appeal the process, and in our case, council is the committee designated to hear appeals. So basically how that would work is, for example, if I cited someone for unsightly premises, they didn't like it, they came in, they didn't think it was unsightly, we would have a special hearing, so to speak, where they could come in and explain to council that look, that's not unsightly, I would, the CAO would present the case of why it is, and then council would make a decision to support whichever side of the argument that they like. And so once we get through the non-compliant portion of it, we'd send a second date for non-compliance or for compliance. And if it's not followed through on that date, the municipality would have the right to go in and remedy the situation. And the municipality is entitled to bill the property owner for the cost incurred. In the past, we had one property that we were going in to clean up we told the property owner that we're going to clean it up, say on the 15th. The property owner felt that the cost would be too high if the municipality did it. So they hired someone to do it on the 14th. If it's not done and the municipality has to do it, we bill for all of our costs to the property owner. And we have to show that we tried to collect the bill by sending, I believe it's a minimum of 3 bills over 3 months. But after that, we can send the unpaid bill and correspondence and document Department of Finance, and the municipality will be reimbursed or would be reimbursed for any cost. And that amount of cost would be placed against the property in the property tax bill with the property owner. And so the municipality would get our money back, and the amount will be posted on the tax bill for that individual or individuals. So that's the basic first one. Does anyone have any other questions on that?
I do, but I'll just see if any of the counselors do first. I'm going to jump ahead with my question then. So let's say you've sent some letters to A, B, and C homeowners who are property owners, and they haven't done anything. So at this point, what's the prompt or the trigger to send the final notice? Like, do you send several notices without the council taking action? And then what's the trigger that makes the municipality go in with a bulldozer? Like, do we have to have a motion of council to go do that? Or do you just get the idea that you're tired of it and you do it and hope council's behind you? Or like, because we know that doesn't happen that often, even though people are unhappy about building. So what triggers that along?
Well, I guess what moves it along, I guess, if it's how bad of a public safety issue is it? Like, say, for example, an exposed basement with debris in the basement that we're trying to get to potentially a property owner to fix up. Something like that, there's notice to comply. The dates on those are 15 to 60 days that you have to give the property owner. So depending on the severity of it would trigger how aggressive the municipality is. If it's something that somebody had just a dilapidated siding, for example, councils in the past have not been clean about enforcing or unsightly issues. They've been more concerned about structural safety type issues.
So I can think of 2 really ugly buildings in the town that are empty and have been empty for a long time, and they have maybe broken windows patched up, nobody living inside. Maybe nobody living in the neighborhood, so nobody maybe has sent a complaint. But in general, everybody would like certain buildings to be cleaned up or removed. So if it's not danger, like, it would still end up coming to the council. Do we want to go in and take action? Like, will it end up at our meeting then to decide to do that?
Well, I guess if it gets to the point where we're going in to tear it down, if I have to issue the notice to comply date to the person and a hearing date, council would be involved with that because the decision is that, look, you've got till this whatever date to remedy the situation. If not, to go in and tear it down. That's something certainly we would go back to council with. There would be discussion at a meeting saying, look, we sent these notices out, we gave a notice to comply, they haven't followed through, they didn't appeal. Basically, do you want us to go ahead with the demolition or remediation? And surprisingly, that my experience over the years, that councils on a few occasions have decided not to push the issue and try to solve it through negotiations. Some with success, but a lot without success.
Other councillor questions or comments? Okay, continue on then, Dan.
Yeah, this next one is on a zoning question. If we have somebody that's non-compliant with zoning, and it's a bit different than the unsightly premise enforcement. Again, the initiation is a lot of times the same. It's either a complaint from a resident or property owner or inspection by a municipal employee. Sometimes people will have issues about the type of work that their neighbor's doing. For example, if somebody has a body shop in a residential neighborhood, neighbors would generally contact us in that example, or would contact us in that example. So basically we do the same thing. We issue notice to comply. Again, this is generally after we've sent polite letters, correspondence with our residents or business owners about complying, and we give them the notice outlining the issue, the remedy, and the deadline. The difference on the zoning thing is we don't have the same enforcement abilities that we do in the dangerous and unsightly premise. In this, it's the legal action against the property owner for non-compliance, and there is up to $1,000 fine for non-compliance, but also a court order can be issued against the property owner by the court. So this process, it's not as fast and expedient as the unsightly premise one. The zoning one seems to take a little longer, has a higher price tag potentially for legal fees and things like that for the municipality, with potentially no way to recoup the cost unless awarded by the court system, which I would assume the municipality would ask for cost incurred if the municipality is going to court.
So we get a court order saying stop having that thing in your property that's not allowed by zoning, and then the court worries about enforcing it after that. If the people don't comply, then the court goes down and does whatever they do, fines or arrests. Like it moves into the court's hands then rather than the municipality.
Yes, once the court order is issued by the justice system, by the judge, the resident has to comply by a certain date, or there would be follow-up legal ramifications.
Questions or comments about this? I've had numerous inquiries about both of these issues recently, and I'm gathering that maybe some of you councillors have as well. And although I've heard this process explained, it still seems difficult to move it along sometimes. So I wanted a refresher, and I thought it would be useful for everyone and the public.
And just so council is aware too, that we have, I guess, ongoing activities in both these areas right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan, for explaining that. And we will go on now to 11B. The public safety issues and concerns. So I'm not just sure how to launch this issue. We have talked about an apparent increase in break and enter and so on in our community. And we have said that we will, at our strategy meeting in October, consider whether these issues might be a major priority for this council in our mandate. But we've also, we've got considerable interest from councillors in moving forward and maybe doing things in the meanwhile. So one of the things that we could do even in advance of deciding officially it's a priority would be to collect information from the public, whether it be collecting data or collecting suggestions. I mean, most people in the community already know about things like calling 911 and neighborhood watch, and they might know about the scan program, and they might know how to call the RCMP. They might know different things, but perhaps there would be some value in talking more formally to people in the public. So Sheldon, I'm just going to ask you if I think you've been having some thoughts about what you might want to do sooner rather than later. And I wonder if you'd like to say anything at this point.
Sure. Well, I do realize that it is on the agenda for October to decide as a council, and maybe that's the most appropriate venue so that we can get everybody's input and structure together. But in the meantime, if there are some things like what you just mentioned, is it a mail out to community to let them know more about the scan program? There's probably a few things that would be worthwhile mentioning. Maybe we update our website, push it out on our Twitter feed, and then do a mail out. And maybe we provide an avenue for citizens to make some commentary. I'm not sure if we have a forums page, or we could just basically ask them to email us, I guess, and collect some more data points so that it's not just a reaction in October to what we perceive as, and I guess we can logically see that there's an increase in property crime. It would be good to get the feedback before we go in to our council meeting and do that planning. So I agree. If we can come up with a few ways of doing that, I think that would be appropriate.
Thanks for that. Who else wants to say something? Jason, I'll let you, and then Sheila.
Thanks. I know that Sheldon had raised previously about some things that were going on in some other communities. And so I just wondered if, in preparation for that in October, if in the meantime we could direct staff to gather the information on what the liability or legal issues are surrounding having security staff hired by the municipality, and what the costs might be in that, or how that might look, so that we could have something in time for our meeting ready to go, rather than talk about it then and then start to investigate that process and find all of that out. And then we're into December and then January and whatever else. But if we could direct them maybe to have that information ready to go for us by then, and that would help us form any decisions by then for sure.
So just to follow up there, Jason, you're referring to, I think it was Oromocto that was hiring security staff in certain locations in their town. You're looking to get a bit more information on why and how and that sort of thing? Or was there another example of security staff hiring that you were thinking of?
Oh, I believe that's the one that Sheldon had raised, and I think he has more information on it than I would have. I just know that certain hours of the evening, and whether or not that would be, whether or not we have a full-time, not full-time or part-time or whatever staff member that's their job and that they do it, or whether or not we do it on a rotating basis or whatever, but that we have something so that we're able to at least observe the community during the hours that the RCMP are not available.
Okay. Sheila, you had something to say?
Yes, I've had a couple of people talk to me, and they were interested in either having something done or them as a group trying to get a group together who would be a neighborhood watch and would actually patrol the community during those hours of because they're all suffering from break-in enters and a lot of things in their area. So that's what their concern is. And if, and I suggested that they would want to check the legality of people, private citizens patrolling and what happens if you confront someone. So.
Yes, I know that many of us see neighborhood watch signs around here and there around the town, but I don't believe I know exactly what neighborhood watch is, and I don't know when I see a sign if that's an active thing in that location or not, and what that's all about, but probably the staff would know something about that. Thank you for that comment. Other comments from counselors?
I guess the only other thing I would add too is, just because it wasn't in the highlights that we shared earlier, but those stats that we looked at were just quite alarming, and the increase seems to be a bit of a hockey stick, in that, you know, this was a bit of an issue during the campaign, let's say, and a couple of months ago, but it just really seems to have skyrocketed over the last month and even last couple of weeks. And I just think it's something that we really need to get a hand on, or else, you know, it's just going to continue to get worse.
So it sounds to me like what I'm hearing would be that we would request that the staff gather some data and information in advance of our October strategy session, so that we're looking at what is available and what happens in other places and so on, rather than deciding what we'd like to look into. I mean, we'll obviously be looking further into things after, but if we could have as much information about what options are available to a community, to a municipality, to address this. Obviously, the idea of talking to the RCMP and, you know, urging them to do more, do better, whatever is there, but we want to know about what other things we might be able to do. And then we've talked about setting up some sort of a forum to ask the community to provide feedback in advance of our strategy session. So that could be handled either via an email out to the community, or the newsletter, or something in the light bill. I don't know how many people get the light bill in the mail, but Dan, can you see how this could all, these things could be happening?
Oh yeah, I think a multiple approach to it. We would hit our social media, our newsletter, direct questionnaire out to people. I think it's a good time too, because for that strategic planning session, we're going to want to get feedback from the community on not just policing issues, but potentially some others. So we've been sort of working on that, to how we're going to solicit information there also. So no, we'll certainly package this together, and certainly do a thing on policing issues on its own also.
So I would encourage counselors to be chatting informally, or even, you know, when you're in group settings, wearing a mask and keeping your distance in a group setting, to tell people that this is something that the council is looking at, and encourage them to take advantage of the opportunities to provide feedback that will be given from the municipality. Anecdotal stuff is good. We need a lot of accurate information, and some new thinking and some reliable old thinking to move forward. So it looks like the staff are going to be working on collecting options and data and opinion. Anything else anybody wants to add before we move on to the next part of the agenda? We certainly don't want to be kicking this can down the road, but I feel like if we're asking the staff to gather more material to work with, we'll be making better plans when we meet in October.
We'll certainly be taking action. For example, early as Wednesday this week in our newsletter, we'll have stuff out.
Good. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item then on the agenda, 11C. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Union of Municipalities New Brunswick. So I've got just a few things to tell you. There was a board of directors meeting in Fredericton in the second part of August. So just a few weeks ago in July, I guess, I got a seat on the board of directors. So I'm on there for a 2-year term, and this was my first board of directors meeting. And the Union of Municipalities is the organization where representatives from municipalities all over the province, mainly Anglophone, but there are some Francophone communities too, get together and they figure out what they want to lobby the provincial government for, more or less. and they share information and education and so on. So a few things I want you to know that I wasn't entirely aware of myself. The board of directors, where I'm now sitting, has got more counselors on it than mayors on it. We went around the table, and I just wanted to tell you all that because I'm finding it interesting, and I like seeing things, what we're doing as a collective. But I would just encourage all of the counselors that there is an opportunity for you to learn more and to grow by participating in this organization. In fact, the last few presidents of this organization have been counselors, not mayors. And so you are absolutely welcome to attend all the Zone 6 meetings. We're Zone 6, and there's only usually about between 2 and 4 a year. And we often have them in Woodstock. So when I invite you, you're absolutely welcome to come. The AGM is on Sunday, October 3rd. And as you've received in your email, there are sessions. So normally what happens in the October weekend is not only is there the AGM for the organization, but there's workshops and sessions and networking and so on. And it's been very informative. So instead of doing in person this year, they're just doing the AGM online on Sunday, October 3rd. And but there are these 4 sessions. So there's the session that we just had on social media. There's one on cybersecurity. There's one on immigration and welcoming newcomers. And then there's going to be one on municipal reform. And I urge you all you counselors, to attend these sessions. They are our municipality paid the fee for us all to attend. They're virtual, and they're good. They're good content. And I'm not 100% sure if they're recorded or not, so you can watch them later. But I just want to really say, when you see something about the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick, it's not just the mayor. It's all the councillors can be as actively involved as the mayor. So one of the things at the we did at the board of directors meetings was we did a round table. And so everybody from every community that was represented, every zone, got to say what were the hot things going on in their community. So I said a few things about healthcare, and so did Sackville. But do you know what almost every other representative on that board mentioned? Like 90% of the others. It was about policing. It was about increase in break-in enters and danger and frustrations with policing. And I thought that was really interesting. It's not just our area. Everybody was talking about, they're talking about the cost, they're talking about what they're getting for what they're paying, and they're all concerned about what's happening with the RCMP's intention to stop doing community policing in a few years. So everyone in this province is interested in policing. In all these small communities, people have similar issues to what we have been discussing. A couple other things, there was a lot of discussion about the Union of Municipalities' position on municipal reform, and I believe that paper is now available, and I believe it's on our sharing thing. The Union of Municipalities is intending, they haven't got anything lined up just yet, to have monthly sessions on topics of interest that can be requested. So they said people can request topics. For example, someone said they wish there was a session on how climate change impacts municipalities. And they said if they get this lineup of monthly sessions off the ground, a municipality could request a session to be devoted to something. So we could ask for one on bylaw enforcement. We could ask for one on how to lobby a cabinet minister. We could ask for one on housing. I don't know. We could ask for things on all different topics, but this is an organization that is here to educate and promote the concerns we have. So we want to take advantage of what we have there. So at the AGM on October 3rd, there will be a number of new resolutions. And so we looked at these at the board of directors meeting in August. And so we've just got the little list of them here that Dan has put up on the screen. So there are motions to do with RCMP costs, municipal insurance, medical clinics, Service New Brunswick, to ban recyclable and compostable materials at landfills, permanent residents voting rights, Indigenous languages on ballots, and municipal climate change funding. So I don't want to take the time to discuss all these motions this evening, but we are going to post on the, I keep saying crowd share, but that's not what it is. It's share screen, no, whatever it's called, whatever it is.
SharePoint.
SharePoint. I'm going to ask Dan to post the information on these resolutions because I will have to vote on them representing our community at the AGM. And I would like to vote what this council would will on each of these points. So this is something I want to urge you to take a look at in the next 2 weeks so that when we meet again in 2 weeks, you can give direction and feedback on all of these issues. Some of them I think are, they're not all yeses and they're not all nos maybe. There's interesting considerations in each. So that's what I wanted to say about the Union of Municipalities. Any comments or questions there? Okay, great. Then we will move on to another doozy, 11D, a staff policy for vaccination. So this is such a complex issue. So Dan, I'm going to ask you to discuss it, to start the discussion.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of talk in municipalities in New Brunswick and of course all over Canada about staff policies for vaccinating staff. So I thought it'd be good to get council to sort of have the discussion around that. Other communities are certainly looking at it, as everyone's well aware, there's pros and cons to implementing it with staff and certain ramifications. Our staff right now, we did a survey and we're below the provincial average for vaccines amongst our staff, which was kind of discouraging to see that we were below average compared to the rest of New Brunswick. COVID is not going away anytime soon as we're here. We've had, as of last Friday, notification that we've had people or I guess an individual at our program that tested positive. We've had 2 staff that have tested positive. So it's certainly, and we're following all the precautions set out by the province on how to isolate and do all those things. But it certainly it's an ongoing issue, certainly in our community for sure. So I guess at some point, does council want to take a position one way or other? Do we want to have some type of mandatory vaccine policy for our employees?
Now I invite councillors to share their thinking.
I think given the present situation in Perth Andover, we have to seriously consider it. We have Andover Elementary going at homeschooling or, home learning as of tomorrow due to confirmed cases there. We're going to have to put some serious thought into the pros and cons of it.
Another councillor.
I guess I know that provincially speaking, if you're not vaccinated, then there are protocols that you have to go through as far as testing goes. Dan, I mean, is that something you would look at? Like, I've said it before, my default is always freedom, and if you want otherwise, you have to convince me. And so I don't like the idea of mandating somebody to do something without having that option. So is that something that you would consider, saying that if you had a staff member that didn't want to vaccinate for whatever reason, that there would be, I guess you would be following the same idea as what the provincial standards are?
Oh yeah, certainly. We would certainly try to follow whatever the norm is. We don't want to put any hardship on our employees, but we want to protect our employees and protect the public also. So some places, right, they've done a thing where if you're not vaccinated, you have to do some type of rigorous testing requirement. I've heard some places have talked about that testing requirement cost potentially being borne by the employee, not the municipality. So I think there's some different options other communities are doing. So we'd certainly look at a best practices on what other communities are doing. Again, if that's a direction council would like us to follow up on, we certainly would look at the different policies that other communities are looking at.
I'm quite eager to hear from all the councillors on this issue.
The policy usually in the places that have the mandatory testing is the rapid tests 2 or 3 times a week, but monthly the other test. And the only problem is our staff would be required to go out of town to get those tests because you can't normally have those tests done in Perth Andover.
Thank you, Sheila. Other counselors?
The rapid test, wouldn't that be done though right at our
Yes, yeah,
area?
yes, it would.
I think that, you know, we should have one way or the other. I mean, it seems like it's the norm in my workplace. I'm expected to get it. And there wouldn't have been a choice. But if you're not willing to get it, you should be monitored at least.
It's such a tricky thing because we're asking about people's personal health choices. And then there's the question of would we hire somebody new? Would we ask their vaccination status before they were hired? Say, like, we're getting into weird areas in HR. On the other hand, if we have unvaccinated staff, that could put our existing staff at higher risk. And that's something to consider as well.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tammy.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, for years, when you entered a training program, you had to provide, when my kids went to school in Maine, it was just a normal thing to have to be, and I know it's this long drawn out question, but for some reason now it seems to infringe on people's rights. But if you wanted to train as a teacher at the University of Maine, you had to have your paperwork. And if you didn't, you weren't going. So I have a hard time with all of a sudden.
I just wondered too, my question was, if we put anything in place or if there's anything, is there an end? And I'm aware of this on the provincial level too. Is there an end date to this that, like, at what point in time would a staff member who doesn't want to vaccinate, but is going to accept the testing, at what point in time would that cease? And I'm assuming that it must at the provincial level somewhere, and I would assume we would follow that. And then B, are we also looking at it from a perspective of protecting our staff too? And are we looking at operational plans, Dan, for our facilities and what we're going to allow into our buildings? And are we looking at that? This is my only question, I guess.
Yeah, right now we've had discussions around that. And I think that's back to a vaccine policy for council to consider. It wouldn't just to cover off staff. Like, say, for example, the fitness center. Would council want to implement a policy there that only that required vaccination for fitness club members? Some places I'm told are doing that. So there's all kinds of vaccine passport type questions, and the province is coming out with, as we're told, they're supposed to be coming out with their own passport, or a passport, I should say.
And that passport, as I understand it, in some jurisdictions, prevents people from going to all kinds of fun things, right? Like, I understand in Quebec, you can't, once the passport is issued, you have to have the passport to be able to go to a theater or bowling alley or presumably a fitness center or something like that too. It sounds to me, councillors, like you'd be interested in following up on the possibility of adopting a policy. We're not adopting a policy tonight. We need to look at some possible examples. And I think the implications are huge. Like, there's huge ethical, philosophical questions about this, but we also have a responsibility to protect our staff and those who come into contact with our staff, and to make their work lives as safe and comfortable as possible. rather than, a few people feeling anxious all the time about unvaccinated coworkers. So would it be accurate then, counselors, to say that we would like to ask the staff to go seek out and develop a potential policy that underlines the need for vaccination in our staff? I mean, we'll discuss it in detail. I don't know if it would be at the later September meeting or whether it would wait until October, but and then certainly as the province comes down with examples, maybe we would, we'd be able to use whatever they do. Is that the will of council though, for us to direct our staff to go down that route? I'm seeing a few people kind of saying yes. Is that what I'm seeing? Give me a nod or something, people.
Yeah, I would think that any decision we want to make would be based on information. So yes.
Well, we're not just saying we'll go find out things about COVID. We're saying what would be an example of a policy that would be absolutely fair and reasonable. And it would take some time to look for this policy and to personalize it. So we don't want to waste staff's time if we're going to end up saying, no, we want to go the freedom route. But personally, I would like to pursue a policy that would make vaccinations required. And it sounds like a few other counselors are thinking that as well. So unless I hear an objection, we're going to direct staff to go and come up with something over the next 2 to 5 weeks.
My only comment, I do support what you're saying. My only comment is the direction to staff is not to go and find out more information about a policy that requires people to have vaccines. I thought it was go and find out what are the available options, and then if it makes sense, that one of the options would be to require that there be staff that have vaccines. I'm not trying to play with words here. I'm just suggesting that I don't think the direction is 100% that we know right off the top of our heads without looking too further at this issue that we're going to require vaccines. We want to build the information around it to make the decision, correct?
Yes, actually, I appreciate that distinction.
Okay, thank you.
We want to know whether what we might need to do to protect our staff and to encourage vaccines, and what are some of the things that we might do, and one of the things might be a policy. But yes, that's right. That's a good distinction.
Thank you.
Okay.
As long as we make sure that there is a plan in place for those who will not do the vaccines to have a safety issue that we can use as an alternative.
Sorry, what do you mean? She'll just say another sentence.
I'm just saying that if someone will not, they have a reason why they don't want to, that we have a plan, we look at the alternatives of what would be in place for them, similar to what Horizon Health is doing, similar to what other places are doing. So if they will not vaccinate, the testing, rapid test 3 times a week and once a month with the other, or whatever it is. I think it'd be important for us to have that kind of what's happening out there and have that in place too.
Okay. And I think the people that refuse to entertain it or to get testing, I think those people will have come up in jurisdictions, and they will have had to deal with finding an approach for them too. Okay, let's move on then to number 11E, the last item on our public agenda here, which is the Regional Service Commission draft budget. So the Regional Service Commission has a budget meeting a board of directors meeting this coming Thursday, and they're going to be approving the budget, and the draft was sent around last week. And I asked Dan to take a look at it, and I also sent it to Sheila because Sheila's been very active on our behalf on the Regional Service Commission and knows a little bit about their budget as well. So it was an awful lot of pages with not that many numbers on it, really, Dan. But if you could just tell us what your opinion was, and then we'll invite Sheila to also make any comments.
Yeah, just going through it, I didn't get enough time to comb through it advance. I was hoping to get that done before tonight's meeting, but I got through about halfway through it. It sort of appears that the increase, you can see the overall budget appears to be up about 3%, which isn't anything too outlandish. The basic difference in the cost seems to be all in the solid waste portion of the budget, but I'd like to follow up more on that. The questions around the RCs and direction, I have had some correspondence on the garbage or recycling contract with JS Bellis. Our concerns around there about monitoring the contaminated product in each recycling load. How it works is the RC has the the ability to go in and audit the waste from recycling. They've done 2 audits this year that I'm aware of. One had 30% contamination and the other one had 15% contamination. And we've asked them to do the next audit they do, if they could do it on the load from our community, that'd be great. Just so we can get our head around how well we're doing. But from the financial thing, that's one of the concerns we've had, is that the dollars being spent on recycling without the measures in place to evaluate the program. So that's something of a concern. It's not just the financial budget type thing, but it's sort of the results we get from our budget. So, but other than that, at first glance, everything seemed well. I'll certainly get a better detailed review of it, and I'll get Jamie to take a look at it further also, just see if there's anything that pops out to her. But it looked like a reasonable increase over last year.
Thank you. I don't know, Sheila, if you had a chance to take a look at it as well.
Yes, I looked at it and it is similar. It looks like they've done about 3% all over the board. One of the things that we worked with them really hard on the last few years was to make sure that they took the last year's the money and put it into that instead of sending it in a reserve fund all the time, because we found is that we were constantly paying more and then it was going into reserve. And for example, when they did that with recreation for a long period of time, and then we kind of all mutinied when we had no rec director, and we left it, and then the money that was left there in the reserves, they only let it out to the people who were in there at that time, and all the other communities who'd left the rec thing didn't get to use the money from that. So it's one of the things that has to be watched, is that they do bring forward any excess from one year into the next year's budget. Otherwise, they just keep adding more and more on and that. So, and they did that. They did bring it forward the last year, I think it was the last 2 years. So that's why our amount went down.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for making that point, explaining that. So what I'm planning to do, the budget meeting, the board of directors meeting for the RSC, where the budget is being voted on, is this Thursday. So what I'm hoping to have happen is that we will send an email with our concerns, some of these things, to the finance committee in advance of that meeting, so that, and ask them to address these questions at the meeting. There's I'm not just sure I can actually attend that meeting on Thursday. So we're going to try and put our concerns in writing in advance. And where there is a little bit of new configuration of the committees, we're hoping that our concerns will be taken seriously by the new finance committee there. Okay, so I don't know if there's anybody else want to make a comment on the RSC budget. What a note to end on. Okay, so now, Dan, do we have in-camera issues to discuss?
None this evening.
Oh, none. Okay, well, councilors, this has been a meeting with many, many important issues, and I do appreciate your attention to them all and all the reading that was necessary to be well prepared for tonight. We do have a council committee meeting in 2 weeks. And that will be more background and extensive discussion on various things. That's also a public meeting, but it's lengthier discussion, in-depth discussion on certain issues, and Dan will be sending out an agenda for that closer to the date. So I guess all we need now is a motion to adjourn.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the lovely colors in the fall over the next few weeks. Well, over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Enjoy the end of summer and wear a mask and keep your distance.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Right.